Alright guys, so your lesson for the week, this first one is for 8-9, which are about cubic units of volume, which is something possibly new for you and could seem a little overwhelming, but I'm here to tell you it's actually pretty easy. So let's dive in and kind of take a look. One of the harder parts of it is that we have some new vocabulary words to learn. You might have learned these back in like maybe 2nd or 3rd grade, but it's been a while, so we're going to briefly talk about them again. So we're going to learn about what a face, an edge, and a unit, cube, volume, and a cubic unit. So first of all, when it's talking about a cube here, normally in class I would have given you a Unifix cube, you know, those little cube-shaped squares. But I want you to instead, if you have a dice at home, that might be a good thing to look at if you have like a dice from a board game or something like that. But it's also okay just to visualize this. It's okay if you don't actually have one. But basically what you're going to want to think about is the faces or the sides of a dice, okay? I'm going to call it a cube. So this says, how many faces does a cube have? Well, think about a dice. How many different numbers can you roll up to on a regular sided dice? There are 6 little sides that you can measure up all together. So this is a good little picture example as well to show you if you want to kind of take a look at that. So you'd have the front, you'd have the back, you'd have the top, you'd have the bottom, and there would be 1, 2 sides for 6 sides all together. So then it says, how many edges does a cube have? Well, here's something to think about. Your edge is basically going to be all of these. So right here, I just drew 1, 2, 3, 4. But then I also want you to think about this. There's also a side on the back. That would be 1, 2, 3, 4 as well right there. So that would be 4 and then 8. And then you will have to connect these. So that would be 1, 2, 3, 4. So all together that would be 4 for the front, 4 for the back, and then the 4 that you use to connect for a total of 12 edges altogether to a cube. So then it says, write true or false for each statement. It says all the edges of the cube are the same length. Well, that answer is true. It wouldn't work correctly if they weren't the same size and shape. It would be a little wobbly, funky shaped. And then it says all the faces of a cube are the same size square. Again, that has to be true. They all have to be the same size or it wouldn't work the same way. So now I want you to think about volume. If I were to take that one little cube and instead turn it into a much bigger shape, I can tell you the volume. Volume means what you've got going on the inside of a shape. If I were to talk to you about a 2-dimensional thing, something like this, and I were to ask you what's the area of this rug, or whatever this is, you could count up all the little squares that are happening on the outside. Well, if I turned that into a 3-dimensional shape, and I could tell you how big each of those cubes were, I'm drawing this very poorly, but you could start to imagine how many little cubes there were all together, because you can imagine this as being a little 3-dimensional cube. Oh, look at this. Such a better drawing. In fact, I'm embarrassed of mine, so I'm going to erase it. So let's look at this one right here. This says a unit cube is a cube with each edge equaling 1 unit long. Unit could be centimeters or inches or meters or whatever you want it to be. It says the volume of a unit cube is 1 cubic unit. The volume of an object can be measured by filling it with unit cubes without any gaps or overlaps. Like I said earlier, finding out what's going on the inside of a shape. So here it says cut out the nets and fold them to make an open-ended prism. Here's what I want to show you what they're talking about. Oh, I didn't actually take a screenshot of it. If you look at your very next page in your SAB, it's got these little like Tetris-looking shapes. You don't have to cut these out. You can if you want to, but basically what you're doing is you're creating this shape without a top, so you could imagine actually filling it all up, okay? I don't think you need to use it. But here's what it's showing you. It says fill the prisms with 1 centimeter cubes. We don't have those at home. So instead, I want you to look at what's going on here. This is telling you that your cubes would be, let me choose a different color, 1, 2, 3 cubes high. You'd have 1, 2, 3, 4 cubics wide, and then there would be 1, 2, 3 cubic rows back. So here's what I want you to consider. One way to do this is to actually just figure out how many cubes you have in your first row. So let's think about that. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 cubes in my first little row. Well, how many rows And you guys know what I'm talking about, rows here. I basically mean like columns, I guess is the better term, but that's okay. If how much do I have in the next one? Well, if there was 12 in this first one, there's also going to be 12 in the second one, and there would be 12 here in this third one. So how many cubes would I have all together? I would have 36 cubes. Now, this is going to be a little funky. When you talked about, like I showed you a second ago, in something like this, if I were to show you that, you would tell me that you had 12 square units. And the reason you would call those square units is because you're showing me how many little squares there are. Well, you just showed me how many cubes there are. So what you would actually say is 36 cubic units. Now, you've learned another shorthand way to write this. You sometimes know that you can also write, I have 12 units squared. Well, you could do the same thing over here. I have 36 units cubed. So you would write a 3 there instead of a 2. So basically think about it like this. This is a 2-dimensional flat shape. This is a 3-dimensional cube. And so that's why you've got that third there. So let's try that out again with this same one. If I had this first shape, I just want to pay attention to what's going on the front side of this new shape. So I've got 1 cube here, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So I have 10 cubes out in front. And then it looks like I only have one more group of that. So I'm going to have another group of 10 cubes. So that would altogether equal 20 cubes altogether. And then the way I would write that as volume is I could write it as 20 cubic units, or I could write down 20 units cubed. Either one's totally fine. Okay, so let's look at this one. The one thing that's great about these ones today is it's really all truly about counting. You're just going to be kind of counting, and the recommendation that I would make for you is to sort of split it up by looking just first at what the front face of your cubes would be, and then figure out how many groups of that there are all together. So again, let's count. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 little groups of cubes on my front face. And then there are 1, 2, 3 more groups, which makes for a total of 4 groups. So one option is I could just simply add together 15 4 times. Or I could do 15 times 4. But no matter what you do there, your answer that you're going to come up with is that you should have 60 cubes in total. And let's write that down as 60 cubic units. What I would really love for you guys to do right now is to pause and do 10, 11, and 12 on your own, okay? It won't take you long. Pause and do 10, 11, and 12 on your own. And then that way when we come back, I can just quickly give you the answers rather than counting them all up, okay? So again, I hope you paused. I hope you're back after trying that out. And if we look at our first face of cubes, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And then there were 2 groups of that. So 2 groups of 12 would be 24. And so I have 24 units cubed. Okay, coming down here to number 11. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So there were 8 in my first row. And then there was 1, 2, 3 more rows. So that's going to be 4 full groups of 8, which is 32, which would make for 32 cubic units. Number 12 is a little longer, but same process. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. So I have 16 cubes in this first row. And it looks like altogether I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 rows in total. So that's going to be 5 rows of 16 there. So 16 times 5 is what I'm going to need to solve. And that ends up being 80. So I've got 80 cubes, which is a total of 80 units cubed. You could even write it like that. The next part of your assignment is a puzzled penguin. Let's look at this one since I have time. It's only been 9 minutes, so I've got a few more minutes. So this says, Dear math students, this drawing of a cube appears to have a volume of 19 cubic units, but when I built it, I used 27 cubes. what did I do wrong? Well, I have an idea. I think maybe he only counted what he can see on the outside rather than for accounting what he's missing over here. So let's see what he came up with. He's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So maybe he counted those first 9, and then he did 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. Okay, well, I'm not totally sure what he did then. So it says, it looks like he only tried to do the ones that are visible, whatever way that he did that. So let's say it looks like you only counted the ones that were visible. So he needs to, we basically need to tell him, don't forget there are some that are hidden. Okay. So I'm going to come down here and show you guys what I want you to do for practice today. Finishing your SAB is not an option. We just did all those together. But for your homework and remembering, this is probably your best choice today. And the reason I'm going to say that is I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to find an IXL that's cubes only. But if I do, that will be an option if I find a cubes only IXL. But if there's nothing listed for 8-9, that's why I couldn't find, I couldn't find one that was cubes only. So no matter what, this is probably going to be your best bet today. But do make sure you do a little practice. And tomorrow I'm actually going to show you an even easier way to solve, especially when you don't have cubes to help you out.